I never need an excuse to talk about King Kong. With the release of a new film seems as good as any. With total monster movie saturation on the horizon, I've turned my focus back to the birth of cinema's greatest beastie. My love for the 1933 films knows no bounds, and I've been fascinated by the enduring power of this character and how he's manifested throughout the past 8 decades. His first appearance was so undeniably perfect, the ripples of its influence continue to this day, and yet each reimagining chose to focus on a different facet of this endlessly appealing character. The Toho films of the 1960s, along with no less than 3 animated series over the years, lean heavily on the base appeal of a giant ape named Kong set against the fun and games of that era's monster craze. The Dino De Laurentiis 1976 remake and its 1986 sequel attempted to preserve the original story's major beats while populating it with updated characters and situations. In terms of far-reaching interpretations, there was even a 1998 straight-to-video animated musical adaptation featuring songs written by the Sherman Brothers, which chose to amplify the show business framing of the original film. This inexplicable gem is a rare piece of little-known Kong history and deserves its own episode, so stay tuned. Peter Jackson's 2005 film may be one of the only remakes in the history of film that can be described as loving its source material too deeply. Yet even in the most faithful of adaptations, something of his soul seems to have been left in 1933. Even its own sequel, The Magnificent Son of Kong, released the same year from the same artists, knew it couldn't hold a candle to their original achievement, wisely choosing to explore the ramifications of that story, from the regrettable to the intentionally humorous. Beyond the variances in historical specificity, there must be more universal qualities that made him so immediately an icon of our culture. This question has stuck with me. What exactly is the timeless essence of Kong? Pragmatically, looking at the raw contents of his various appearances throughout the years, one could cynically argue that it's simply that base, animalistic, boyhood appeal of a giant beast wreaking havoc, which may be the only observable family value between the films in his canon. Combine that value with an otherwise exemplary production, and it might account for a film of above-average performance. But that doesn't feel right. Kong is another beast entirely. As I've discussed in a few of my previous pieces of cinematic analysis, I believe that, in the absence of bygone mythologies, we've all become collectors of functioning mythological fragments from our popular culture, and for me, Kong is no exception. At the time of its release, critics were apparently too distracted by the technical wizardry on display to give these themes any consideration. Variety called it purely an exhibition of studio and camera technology, and it isn't much more than that. The slightly more generous New York Times titled their review, "A fantastic film in which a monstrous ape uses automobiles for missiles and climbs a skyscraper." That was the title. It would be several decades in the wake of the film's colossal success before the deeper virtues of the film would be mined. In 1972, French philosopher and critic Roger Dadoun observed the physical gigantism of Kong contrasted against the socially small position of Anne Darrow, writing, "Kong is presented there in a luminous poster like the eighth wonder of the world. Faced with such a prodigy, who would wonder about the furtive gesture of an unemployed woman stealing a fruit?" In 1974, American film critic Gerald Peary considered the film a political fantasy, drawing parallels between the Carl Denham character and President Franklin D. Roosevelt. I find little to agree with in this interpretation, which plays almost entirely on the first and final acts of the film to the exclusion of its dynamic centerpiece. It's an amusing read that is a testament to just how unique our individual views can be on the same work of art. In 1975, in response to Peary's analysis, David N. Rosen interpreted Kong the character as a reflection of the Depression era in which the film is set. In his words, Kong symbolizes this possibility, the threat of the masses losing their chains in a revolutionary upheaval. His broad analysis also touched upon the imagery of scaling the Empire State Building, which I dare not repeat here. You've got to read that one for yourself. In 1984, American philosopher Noel Carroll examined Kong through the lens of social Darwinism. The prehistoric imagery and the condensation of the jungle and the city draft the Darwinian metaphor of the struggle for existence as the sign of modern competitive urban life. In 1988, author J.P. Taylor proffered a Freudian reading of Kong as a representation of culturally prohibited urges against the open love of Jack and Anne. He further applies the film to his theory of the imperative of seeing, our desire to see things we're not supposed to. He writes, Kong suggests the danger in this insistent seeing, a possibility that we might spoil or violate the world in trying to look beyond our normal boundaries. I particularly admire this read for the degree to which it incorporates the film's self-referential frame of show business as a core element, which most other interpretations have discarded entirely. In modern analysis, the film has been popularly accepted as a refutation of colonial values, with a variety of possible racial and historical interpretations therein. These range from the revelatory to the critical, and largely ring true when considering the classically tragic trajectory of the title character and overall structure of the film. It is, undeniably, a cautionary tale. But even a good faith subtextual reading of the film that codes Kong as a symbol for black men through the eyes of white America feels like a reduction of the film's timeless interpretive potential. Any work of art can sustain multitudes of interpretations, but the undeniable transcendence of certain works in our shared pop culture mythology, in my mind, requires a resonance with primal themes that run deeper than historical allegory. Unique to the original version and of central importance in my eyes, until the final moments of the film, the only person to understand Kong through any lens of empathy is the audience. What begins as a pompous adventure gradually reveals itself as a fable representing the perennial tragedy of the human ego. The feeling of not being understood is a touchstone of the human experience. Deliciously, the humans in this story are merely supporting players for us to experience this truth through a beast who proves himself to exhibit more humanity than they do. On his island, he is king. Man rips him from his Eden, from the ancient wisdom of the undivided, into the grid-divided realm of a man-made city. Climbing in vain to reclaim his lost status, he is shot down as all souls are snuffed out in the uncaring systems of mechanical progress over nature. In our lives, we all face this crisis of spirit. The mythological imagery and externalized actions associated with the fall of Kong harmonize with that internal experience. But what do you think? What has sustained the echo of Kong's roar so very loudly since 1933? More importantly, what does the King of Skull Island mean to you?